Stop the ride! Stop the ride! Now! Sarah Mitchell's voice tore through the summer afternoon, her usually calm demeanor shattered by pure terror. For a split second, the crowded midway at Cedar Point froze. The carnival music continued playing. Children with cotton candy stood motionless. Then came the sound metal shrieking against metal, a grinding mechanical scream that would haunt everyone who heard it. From the ride platform, maintenance supervisor Jake Torres frantically slammed the emergency stop button, but it was too late. Control failure! We have a complete control failure. The Raptor, Cedar Point's legendary inverted roller coaster, wasn't responding. 32 riders hung suspended 137 feet in the air, their legs dangling freely as the train shuddered to a halt at the worst possible location, the top of the Cobra Roll, inverted and twisted. In the operations booth, Sarah watched helplessly as her worst nightmare unfolded on the monitors. The catastrophic bolt failure she'd warned about that morning had finally happened. "Get rescue teams, now," she screamed into the radio. "We have a train stuck inverted with possible structural failure." Parents screamed. Phones emerged everywhere, broadcasting disaster in real time. The riders, hanging upside down with blood rushing to their heads, began to panic. One woman's restraint showed signs of loosening. A child was crying uncontrollably, and beneath them, a support beam that hadn't been properly inspected in 18 months began to show stress fractures. Sarah's final radio transmission would later become evidence in the investigation. "I told you this would happen. I told you the coupling was failing. God help us all." August 15, 2024. Cedar Point Amusement Park. Sarah Mitchell, veteran ride operator. 15 years of spotless safety records. Beloved by co-workers. Respected by management. Trusted by thousands of families. But behind the painted steel and cheerful atmosphere was a ticking time bomb. 57 tons of aging metal, deferred maintenance, and corporate pressure that would transform America's roller coaster into a scene of unimaginable horror. What started as a routine summer day would end with the most catastrophic roller coaster incident in modern American history. In less than 4 minutes, a preventable mechanical failure would injure 17 people, traumatize hundreds of witnesses, and expose decades of systematic safety compromises at one of America's most beloved amusement parks. You're watching When Thrills Turn Deadly. If this story grips you, subscribe, like, and share, because what you're about to witness changed the amusement park industry forever. Sarah Mitchell wasn't just a ride operator, she was Cedar Point royalty. For 15 years, she dedicated her life to the massive amusement park on the shores of Lake Erie, working her way up from seasonal employee to head operator of the park's most iconic thrill rides. To guests, she was the reassuring smile who checked their restraints. To her colleagues, she was the gold standard of safety and professionalism. To the steel coasters she operated, she was their guardian, their interpreter, the one who could hear when something wasn't right. Sarah started at Cedar Point in 2009, fresh out of engineering school, with a degree she never expected to use at an amusement park. But something about the massive machines captivated her. These weren't just rides, they were engineering marvels, precision instruments that danced with physics to create controlled chaos. By 2012, she was certified on every major coaster in the park. By 2015, she was training supervisors from other parks. By 2020, she was Cedar Point's unofficial mechanical whisperer. Sarah could hear things others couldn't, recalled Jake Torres, the maintenance supervisor. She'd put her hand on a support beam and feel vibrations that weren't right. She'd hear a wheel assembly starting to wear before instruments detected it. She saved us from 3 potential incidents just through intuition. Her expertise made her a social media sensation. Sarah's TikTok account, Coaster Queen Sarah, had 800 followers who watched her explain the physics of inversions, the engineering behind magnetic brakes, and the intricate safety systems that kept millions of riders safe each year. She demystified the magic while maintaining the wonder, showing people that understanding how coasters worked made them more, not less, amazing. But Sarah's relationship with the Raptor was special. The inverted coaster, which opened in 1994, was the first of its kind to break multiple records. Sarah called it the temperamental artist of Cedar Point's lineup. Unlike newer rides with computerized everything, the Raptor still retained mechanical elements from an earlier era. It required intuition, experience, and respect. Modern coasters are like flying computers, Sarah explained in one of her final videos. But Raptor is analog. You have to listen to her, feel her moods, respect her age. That respect turned to concern in early 2024. Sarah began documenting unusual wear patterns on critical stress points. The massive G-forces the ride, generated up to 4.5 Gs in some sections, were taking their toll on 30-year-old steel. She filed report after report, each more urgent than the last. The response was always the same: within acceptable parameters. The first serious warning came in May 2024. During a routine morning inspection, Sarah discovered hairline cracks in a coupling bolt assembly near the Cobra roll, the ride's signature element where the train inverts twice while changing direction. The cracks were subtle, barely visible, but Sarah knew what she was looking at. This wasn't normal wear. This was metal fatigue approaching failure. She immediately filed an emergency maintenance request. The response from management was swift, but not what she expected. Instead of shutting down the ride, they scheduled the repair for the off-season. "We can't afford to close Raptor during peak season," the operations director told her. "The bolt assembly has redundancies. It's safe enough." Safe enough. Those two words would haunt everyone involved. Sarah's concerns escalated through June and July. She documented everything: photos, measurements, vibration readings. She created a paper trail that would later become crucial evidence. Her social media tone changed too. The enthusiastic mechanical explanations gave way to subtle warnings about the importance of maintenance, the dangers of deferred repairs, the physics of metal fatigue. "I started noticing it in June," said Maria Rodriguez, a fellow operator. Sarah was different around Raptor. She'd spend extra time on pre-ride inspections. She'd personally check things that were technically maintenance's job. She was scared. The fear was justified. Internal documents later revealed that Cedar Point had deferred over $2 million in recommended maintenance on the Raptor alone. The park was struggling financially, still recovering from pandemic losses, facing increased insurance costs, and competing with newer parks with fresher attractions. Every day, the Raptor operated meant roughly 0 in revenue. Every day it was closed meant disappointed guests, refunds, and social media backlash. Sarah found herself caught between her duty to safety and her loyalty to the park that had been her second home for 15 years. She loved Cedar Point, loved the joy it brought to millions of visitors, loved being part of the magic. But she also knew physics doesn't care about quarterly earnings. On August 10, 5 days before the accident, Sarah made a decision that would define her legacy. She submitted a formal safety complaint to the Ohio Department of Agriculture, which oversees amusement park rides. She documented the coupling bolt issue, the deferred maintenance, and her belief that a catastrophic failure was imminent. She copied her supervisors, the park's general manager, and Cedar Fair's corporate safety team. The response was immediate and harsh. Sarah was called into a meeting where she was told her concerns were alarmist, her social media presence was becoming problematic, and her continued employment depended on her supporting park operations. She was given 2 choices: retract her safety complaint or face disciplinary action. Sarah chose neither. She showed up for her shift on August 15, knowing that every train that completed the circuit safely was a small miracle, and that miracles don't last forever. The Raptor wasn't just a roller coaster, it was a revolution. When it opened on May 7, 1994, it changed everything the industry thought possible with inverted coaster design. Riders' legs dangled freely as they flew through 790 feet of twisted steel at speeds reaching 57 miles per hour, experiencing inversions that had never been attempted before. The Bolliger, Mabillard creation, cost $12 million and instantly became Cedar Point's crown jewel. For 30 years, the Raptor had been an engineering marvel. Its statistics were impressive even by modern standards. A 137-foot drop, 6 inversions, including a cobra roll and 2 corkscrews, pulling forces that made fighter pilots take notice. The ride could process 800 riders per hour, making it not just thrilling but efficient, a money-making machine that rarely stopped running. But 30 years is an eternity in mechanical terms. Every single ride, cycle, and there had been millions put incredible stress on the structure. The cobra roll alone subjected the track and supports to opposing forces that twisted steel in ways it wasn't meant to endure repeatedly. What made the Raptor spectacular was also what was killing it. Inverted coasters are uniquely challenging, explained Dr. Robert Chen, a structural engineer who later investigated the accident. The train hangs below the track, creating different stress patterns than traditional coasters. Add in the complex inversions, the lake effect weather, and 30 years of nearly continuous operation, and you have a recipe for accelerated fatigue. The specific weakness that would prove catastrophic was in the wheel assembly coupling system. These critical components connected the wheel bogies to the main chassis, allowing the train to navigate the complex track while keeping riders secure. The original design called for replacement every 5 years. Cedar Point's maintenance schedule had extended this to 7 years. The coupling that failed had been in service for 9. Warning signs had been accumulating since 2022. Maintenance logs showed increasing reports of unusual vibrations, irregular wear patterns, and what operators called the Raptor rattle, a distinctive sound that suggested something wasn't quite right. But each issue was addressed individually, treated as isolated problems rather than symptoms of systemic deterioration. The park's own inspection reports told a troubling story. In 2019, Raptor received a comprehensive structural analysis that identified 17 areas requiring significant refurbishment. By 2024, only 4 had been addressed. The rest were repeatedly postponed, victims of budget constraints and the calculation that the ride could survive one more season. Weather played a crucial role in the deterioration. Located on a peninsula jutting into Lake Erie, Cedar Point experiences extreme temperature variations, high humidity, and winter conditions that are brutal on steel structures. The Raptor's steel expanded and contracted thousands of times each year, creating microscopic cracks that gradually widened into visible fissures. Lake effect weather is murder on steel, noted James Patterson, a former Cedar Point maintenance worker. The salt spray, the freeze-thaw cycles, the humidity, it's like putting the coaster through an accelerated aging chamber. We knew Raptor needed major work. Everyone knew. The specific failure point, the coupling bolt assembly Sarah had identified, was particularly vulnerable. Located at a critical stress junction where multiple forces converged, it experienced the full violence of every ride cycle. Computer modeling would later show that this single component endured forces equivalent to lifting and dropping a fully loaded semi-truck every 90 seconds, 16 hours a day for 30 years. Cedar Point's inspection protocols, while meeting minimum state requirements, hadn't kept pace with the Raptor's aging process. Non-destructive testing that could have revealed the developing cracks was performed annually instead of quarterly. Ultrasonic inspections that might have caught the metal fatigue were deemed unnecessarily expensive for a ride with a proven safety record. The corporate culture at Cedar Fair, Cedar Point's parent company, prioritized newer attractions over maintaining older ones. Internal emails revealed discussions about the Raptor's eventual replacement, with executives arguing that investing millions in refurbishment made little sense when the ride would likely be retired within 5 to 7 years. This run it until it dies mentality created a maintenance death spiral where problems accumulated faster than they were fixed. By August 2024, the Raptor was operating on borrowed time. The coupling bolt Sarah identified wasn't the only problem. It was simply the most visible symptom of a structure being pushed beyond its limits. Stress analysis conducted after the accident found critical fatigue in 43 different components, any one of which could have triggered a catastrophic failure. The morning of August 15, the Raptor completed its standard pre-opening test runs. The computer systems showed green lights across the board. The test dummies completed the circuit without incident. By every metric the park measured, the ride was safe to operate. But the metrics didn't measure what Sarah could feel: the subtle change in vibration patterns, the barely perceptible shift in how the train navigated the Cobra roll, the way the structure seemed to groan instead of sing. The Raptor wasn't just aging, it was dying. And like any dying predator, it was about to become unpredictable. Cedar Point marketed itself as America's roller coaster, a superlative-laden paradise where families created memories and thrill-seekers found nirvana. But behind the cheerful facade and meticulously maintained Main Street was an organization struggling with financial pressures, staff shortages, and an aging infrastructure that demanded resources the park couldn't or wouldn't provide. The COVID-19 pandemic had devastated Cedar Point. The 2020 season was shortened to just weeks, with severe capacity restrictions that turned the normally packed park into a financial ghost town. The park lost an estimated $75 million that year alone. While 2021 and 2022 saw gradual recovery, the debt accumulated during the pandemic created pressure to maximize revenue while minimizing expenses. Every decision became about money, revealed Thomas Anderson, a former Cedar Point financial analyst who resigned in 2023. Maintenance budgets were slashed by 40%. Staff overtime was eliminated, even though we were operating with 30% fewer employees than recommended. Safety margins that had been sacred became negotiable. The maintenance department bore the brunt of these cuts. In 2019, Cedar Point employed 127 full-time maintenance technicians. By 2024, that number had dropped to 78. Those who remained worked exhausting schedules, often pulling 16-hour shifts during peak season. Fatigue led to oversights. Oversights led to deferred repairs. Deferred repairs led to accumulating risks. State inspection reports painted a troubling picture. Between 2021 and 2024, Cedar Point received 43 citations for maintenance-related violations, more than in the previous decade combined. Each was addressed with minimal compliance, doing just enough to satisfy regulators without addressing underlying issues. The philosophy shifted from prevent problems to manage problems. The Raptor, as one of the park's older attractions, suffered disproportionately from budget cuts. Newer rides with manufacturer warranties and high-profile marketing campaigns received priority. The 30-year-old inverted coaster, while still popular, was seen as a legacy attraction that could operate on reputation rather than investment. Internal emails obtained during the investigation revealed shocking decisions. A May 2024 message from the operations director stated, "Raptor refurbishment can wait another season. Divert those funds to marketing for Steel Vengeance." Another from June read, "Accept the risk on Raptor coupling. Probability of failure before end of season is less than 15%. 15%. They had calculated a 1 in 7 chance of catastrophic failure and deemed it acceptable. The pressure came from Cedar Fair's corporate headquarters, where executives focused on stock prices and quarterly earnings faced their own challenges. The amusement park industry was consolidating, with larger companies acquiring smaller ones, creating pressure to maintain profitability to avoid becoming a takeover target. Every dollar spent on maintenance was a dollar not spent on new attractions that could drive attendance. Cedar Point was caught in a death spiral, explained Dr. Lisa Morgan, a theme park industry analyst. They needed new attractions to compete, but maintaining old attractions was eating their budget, so they gambled that they could defer maintenance just a little longer. It's a gamble parks make every day. Usually, they win. This time, they didn't. Staff morale plummeted as safety concerns mounted. Maintenance workers reported being told to make it work when requesting parts or tools. Ride operators were instructed to minimize downtime, even when reporting potential issues. The culture shifted from safety first to safety within reason, a subtle but deadly change in an industry where physics doesn't compromise. Whistleblowers faced retaliation. 2 maintenance supervisors who formally documented safety concerns were transferred to less desirable positions. A ride operator who posted concerns on social media was terminated for violating social media policy. The message was clear. Loyalty to the park meant silence about problems. Sarah Mitchell's situation exemplified this toxic culture. Her expertise was valued when it kept rides running but became problematic when it identified expensive problems. Her August 10 safety complaint to state regulators was seen not as conscientious protection of guests, but as betrayal of the Cedar Point family. The irony was that Cedar Point's leadership genuinely believed they were acting responsibly. They pointed to millions of safe ride cycles, decades without major incidents, and inspection reports that technically met state requirements. They confused luck with safety, interpreting the absence of catastrophe as evidence of adequate precautions, rather than recognizing they were playing Russian roulette with physics. On the morning of August 15, Cedar Point's general manager held his daily operations meeting. The agenda included discussion of record attendance projections for the upcoming weekend, plans for the Halloween season, and preliminary budget discussions for 2025. The Raptor's coupling bolt issue was mentioned briefly, with the maintenance director assuring everyone that it was monitored and managed. 3 hours later, monitored and managed would become multiple casualties and catastrophic failure. August 15, 2024 began with the kind of perfect summer weather that brings massive crowds to Cedar Point. Clear skies, temperatures in the low 80s, and a gentle breeze off Lake Erie promised ideal conditions for a record-breaking day. The parking lot was full by noon. Lines for major attractions stretched over 2 hours. The Raptor, celebrating its 30th anniversary season, was running at full capacity with trains dispatching every 90 seconds. Sarah Mitchell arrived at 6:00 a.m. for her opening shift. Her first action was inspecting the Raptor, as she'd done every morning since identifying the coupling issue. What she found made her stomach drop. The hairline crack she'd been monitoring had grown overnight. Not dramatically, but enough to change classification from developing concern to imminent threat. She immediately photographed the coupling, measured the crack expansion, and called Jake Torres from maintenance. Together, they examined the failing component as the morning sun cast long shadows across the steel structure. Torres's assessment was grim. This needs immediate replacement. We're looking at potential catastrophic failure within days, maybe hours. Sarah drafted an emergency closure recommendation while Torres prepared a work order for immediate repair. They estimated 4 hours to replace the coupling, a half-day closure that would disappoint thousands but prevent disaster. Sarah submitted the recommendation at 7:45 a.m., marking it urgent safety critical. The response came at 8:30 a.m., From the operations director, recommendation reviewed and denied. Continue normal operations with enhanced monitoring. Maintenance scheduled for tonight, after park closing. Sarah couldn't believe what she was reading. Enhanced monitoring meant nothing if the coupling failed. She called the operations director directly, pleading her case. The response was firm. The park is packed. We can't close Raptor on a peak day. Your concerns are noted, but we've operated safely with this issue for months. One more day won't matter. But physics had other plans. At 2:43 p.m., the Raptor was operating at full capacity. Train 1 had just completed loading 32 excited riders, families, teenagers, a couple celebrating their anniversary with a nostalgic ride on the coaster where they'd first met. Sarah was at her position in the operator's booth, watching the monitors with growing dread as Train 2 navigated the course. The failure began subtly. At 2:44 p.m., the stressed coupling bolt reached its fatigue limit. It didn't break immediately, but began deforming, creating irregular forces on the wheel assembly. Train 2's riders likely felt nothing more than slightly rougher than normal vibrations as they climbed the 137-foot lift hill. At 2:45 p.m., as Train 2 crested the first drop, the coupling underwent rapid plastic deformation. The computer systems detected anomalies but interpreted them as sensor errors rather than mechanical failure. The train accelerated into the first inversion as designed, pulling 4.5 Gs of force. That force was the final straw. At 2:46 p.m., the coupling bolt experienced complete structural failure. The wheel assembly partially separated from the chassis, causing immediate loss of speed and stability. The train entered the Cobra roll, the complex double inversion that was the Raptor's signature element at the wrong velocity and angle. Instead of smoothly navigating the element, Train 2 shuddered to a stop at the worst possible position, inverted, 120 feet in the air, with riders hanging upside down, and the damaged wheel assembly preventing movement in any direction. Sarah's training kicked in instantly. She hit the emergency stop for all trains, preventing Train 1 from dispatching and potentially colliding with the stuck Train 2. Her voice over the PA system was calm but urgent. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a temporary delay. Please remain seated with restraints secured." But this wasn't a temporary delay. This was a catastrophic failure, with 32 people trapped in a position human bodies weren't meant to endure. Blood rushing to their heads, restraints digging into shoulders, the psychological terror of hanging inverted with no idea when or how they'd be freed. The rescue operation was a nightmare of complexity. Cedar Point's emergency response team had trained for stuck trains, but never for one trapped inverted at the Cobra Roll's apex. The local fire department's ladder trucks couldn't reach that height at that angle. The ride's evacuation platforms were designed for different positions. As minutes turned to an hour, the medical situation became critical. 3 riders lost consciousness from the inverted position. A child began showing signs of severe distress. An elderly man with a heart condition started experiencing chest pains. What had been a mechanical failure was becoming a medical emergency. Sarah watched from the ground, her expertise useless in the face of the disaster she'd predicted. She coordinated with emergency responders, providing technical specifications and identifying the safest approach routes. But she knew what everyone was slowly realizing: there was no quick solution. It took 2 hours and 43 minutes to evacuate all riders from Train 2. A specialized crane had to be brought from Cleveland. Each rider was individually harnessed and lowered to safety, while still partially inverted. 17 required immediate medical treatment. 3 were critical. All were traumatized. The viral videos were devastating for Cedar Point. Hundreds of phones captured riders hanging upside down, children crying, parents pleading for help. The footage spread globally within hours. accompanied by Sarah's leaked safety reports showing the park knew about the danger and chose to ignore it. At 5:47 p.m., the last rider was safely on the ground. The Raptor would never operate again. Cedar Point closed immediately for investigation. Sarah Mitchell, the guardian who'd tried to prevent disaster, was simultaneously fired for undermining park operations and hailed as a hero for her warnings. The investigation that followed revealed systematic failures at every level. The coupling bolt that failed showed fatigue damage that had been developing for over 18 months. 42 other critical components were found to be operating beyond safe parameters. The decision to continue operations, despite known risks, was deemed grossly negligent. Cedar Point faced over $100 million in lawsuits. Criminal charges were filed against 3 executives for reckless endangerment. New federal regulations mandated independent safety inspections and gave operators authority to shut down rides without management override. Sarah Mitchell never worked in the amusement park industry again. She became a safety consultant, traveling the country teaching parks about the importance of listening to their operators, maintaining their rides, and never gambling with physics. Her presentation always ends with the same message: steel doesn't care about your quarterly earnings. Physics doesn't negotiate with profit margins, and gravity never takes a day off. The Raptor's steel skeleton still stands at Cedar Point, too expensive to demolish, too dangerous to operate. It serves as a 137-foot-tall monument to what happens when the thrill of profit overtakes the responsibility of safety. Every morning, when the sun rises over Lake Erie, it casts the shadow of the Cobra Roll across the Midway, a permanent reminder of the day America's roller coaster became America's wake-up call. If you found this story important, please subscribe to our channel. We investigate the untold stories behind amusement park incidents, revealing the human factors and systemic failures that turn dreams into nightmares. Like, share, and comment with your thoughts. Because in an industry built on controlled danger, the line between thrill and threat is thinner than you think. Remember, question safety, demand transparency, and never ignore the guardians who keep you safe. We'll see you in the next episode.